Thailand is bracing for another round of anti-government protests. Protesters have vowed to stay on the streets until lawmakers vote on proposed constitutional amendments. A special two-day session of parliament starts tomorrow to decide the fate of the proposed changes. Saksitsa Sambat explains what's at stake.
Thailand's 2017 constitution has always been a contentious one, since it was written under the military government of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, aimed to curb the powers of elected officials and to fortify the political legacy of said military government. Now fast forward a couple of years later, the Prime Minister is still called Prayut, and some of his men have actually become politicians and are now in Parliament, which is now being tasked to amend this constitution, while at the same time anti-government protesters continue to call for vast political reforms. There are 7 draft bills on the table, all with varying degrees of complexity in the details of what and how something in the constitution needs to be changed. These drafts can be roughly divided up into 3 different groups. The government coalition's sole draft covers the bare minimum to open up the path for a drafting committee to come up with a new charter. The 5 opposition drafts also aim to curb the powers of the senators in the upper house, since they have all been appointed by the previous military government, and because of that make it too much of a lopsided affair for both chambers. And then there's a draft by civil society group iLaw, backed by over 100,000 signatures in a petition, demanding a fully elected Senate and also erasing the political and legal legacy that have been implemented by the previous military government. And all that amidst a new anti-government protest that is scheduled to take place outside of Parliament, the latest in the current wave of rallies aiming for vast political changes. They have been there last September when Parliament already discussed parliament changes but failed to vote on any of those drafts. Just as a reminder, their key demands are the resignation of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha's government, a reform of the once believed to be sacred monarchy, but also a new constitution. They plan to rally from Tuesday afternoon until there's a vote in Parliament. But that may take until Wednesday evening. That is how long Parliament is scheduled to deliberate and ultimately decide on those constitutional amendment drafts. But even then, mind you, this is just the first reading. It still has to go through 2 more readings, and even when there's a constitutional drafting committee set up that comes up with all those changes and proposals, maybe even a whole new constitution, that has to be approved in a public referendum. So even though changes to the constitution or a new one is the most realistic goal by the anti-government protesters, it could take much more longer than they are actually hoping for. Saksitsa Sambat, CNA, Bangkok.